Hey, welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Jason, host of Fighting Words Financial. And today, let me start off by apologizing for the clickbait title on there. It is definitely clickbait. The letter that Elon Musk sent out to his employees was not an emergency letter or anything like that, although it's kind of being framed that way by the media to a degree. This is really something that he does every single year. It's not a surprise to me, nor should it be a surprise to anyone else who's an investor in Tesla, that he puts out sort of a state of the union for Tesla at the end of every year. Now, I know there's a lot of concern for folks around the poor stock performance of Tesla for the year. And I think that that Elon Musk is, of course, dead wrong about the reasons why. He attributes that all to the Federal Reserve. And I'll get into why that isn't true later on. But let's look at the bottom line of how Tesla is performing right now. So the performance of the stock right now really is not reflective of the fundamentals of the company. And it's very, very simple. It requires no deep analysis. Tesla's cash flow and revenue look great. Their profits look great. Their margins in the industry, in the auto industry, are second to none. I've heard a couple of people claim that they have no debt. That is not true. They do have a lot of, not a lot, but some outstanding convertible debt out there. And to be honest with you, those convertible bonds are looking really, really attractive right now, especially for the ones that mature in 2024. They do have a small coupon or small amount of interest that's associated with them, and they are convertible at a certain price, right? Now, right now, that price is pretty far away. That strike price is pretty far away, but you could sit on, I think, yields to maturity on that debt, not the coupon rate. Yield to maturity on that debt was about 4% the last time I looked at it. But it's definitely not a crazy return, but it's a guaranteed return of roughly around 4%. Tesla has zero chance of going bankrupt in that time frame. And a lot of that has to do with the $20 billion that they have in cash. Okay. So like I said, the analysis is very simple. Is there going to be a decline in demand for Tesla vehicles? That is entirely possible. Actually, let me upgrade that to likely. Is going to be a catastrophic decline in demand? Probably not. The demand decline is largely going to be attributed to the higher cost of capital. People going to get loans to buy Teslas are going to have to pay more in the way of interest, and that's going to price some people out. Okay. So very simple. I think you should plan on the next 6 months being relatively challenging when it comes to Tesla stock. And then after that, fundamentals are going to absolutely influence what's going on. They're also going to see a massive increase in production capacity over the next year or so. By the end of the year, they should have production capacity of roughly 2.7.9 million per yields from the Semi and the Tesla Semi, and possibly the launch of the Cybertruck by the end of the year, and even further, possibly the launch of a new, cheaper vehicle. Also, guys, I am testing out my new net connection. It should be significant than it was before, with a lot less in the way of delays and things like that. I have like literally 3 times as much more upload speed now. I simply didn't have another type of connection available until Verizon moved in and offered me this deal with their 5G connection. I'm not being paid by Verizon or anything like that, but I did want to mention, if you guys are having connection problems or issues like that, let me know still, because I need to fix my internet connection. All right. So Musk sends out the end of the year memo every year. And just like past years, he implored volunteers to volunteer to deliver last minute cars to customers, claiming every incremental shipment will make a real difference. He's really looking to outperform in terms of expectations, which he likes to do every year. But Musk addressed the drubbing of Tesla stock this year, which employees are saying is a problem. They've been grumbling about it. And because a lot of them are paid with stock-based compensation, and that goes all the way down to people on the assembly line. Like, I know people on the assembly line are making total compensation of like $120,000 a year. And that's great. These are, and one of the guys I know that does that, never even finished a high school education, works on the assembly line, makes $120,000 a year. I think it's very interesting. So, but Musk claims that the stock performance at least on Twitter, is a result of rising rates and activities by the Federal Reserve. It's actually fairly easy without a ton of detailed analysis to demonstrate that this isn't true either. I'm not going to delve into his personal behavior on Twitter. I'm just going to say that comprises at least 50% of the reason why the stock is down at this point. If we look at the companies that we could be comparing Tesla to, most of those are on the NASDAQ. Musk always says that, and people always say that this company is not a car company. It is a technology company, and rightly should be compared to other technology companies. So we've seen a radical repricing of future cash flows for all technology companies based on the rising return for a risk-free investment like a government bond. So you can go out and buy a government bond for 4%, on a 6-month basis, 3% on a 10-year basis at this point. And the basic calculation is that a lot of people that are in stocks right now, because there've been zero return on bonds for the last decade or so, more than a decade, they're more likely now to settle for that lower return in exchange for a bit of safety. They were forced into investing other things. Part of this calculus doesn't work for Tesla because that type of investor probably wouldn't have bought Tesla to begin with. They would have bought a Johnson & Johnson or something like that. But if we compare Tesla performance to the NASDAQ, which I think would be kind of appropriate, we're looking at the NASDAQ year to date, which is almost full year return, is negative 33%. And Tesla is down nearly 70% to date, right? I think it was 70% on Monday, all right? So it's more than double the downside return that the NASDAQ has gotten. And a lot of that has to be attributable to his activities outside of Tesla. But taking a look at the fundamentals of Tesla, and this was really easy to do and didn't require any complex analysis or anything, the company is in really solid shape, and incredibly solid shape, and well positioned to extend their lead next year over the competition. But one of the things I wanted to get to today that is peripherally involved with Tesla, that somebody asked a question about on my last live stream that I never got a chance to really address in depth, was the sodium ion battery. And is that a threat to the 4680 cell and that sort of thing? Not directly a threat to the 4680 cell, but the sodium ion battery is going to make a big splash in the EV industry. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but roughly 2 years ago, actually it was on January 13th of 2021, I did almost ago. So I did a video on what happens after all the lithium is gone. And that was tongue in cheek as well, because we're not going to run out of lithium. It's the 26th most abundant element on the planet. But it is nothing in terms of abundance when compared to sodium. And I talked about a future where sodium ion batteries were going to take over things for like stationary storage, laptops, tablets, watches, phones, that sort of thing, and how we would see vehicles on the lower end probably be powered by sodium ion batteries in the future. I radically misinterpreted or misunderstood the pace of innovation when it comes to sodium ion batteries. And it's not just that the future was, I thought, so far away in 2021. The reality is that future has already come. CATL is going to be mass producing sodium ion batteries in the future. And we have to get a little bit into the weeds here about, and let's talk about this. Tesla already uses battery chemistry for some of the European market that already has lower capabilities than the sodium ion batteries that are being produced today. What I'm talking about is the lithium ferrophosphate batteries or the lithium iron phosphate batteries, which I talk about a lot on this channel because I talk about the advantages in cost, in cycle life, and in safety, and how that is going to make a big difference. It's really going to be about margins, and it's going to be it is a big difference over the cost of producing some other more expensive battery chemistries that use lithium, cobalt, manganese, that sort of thing, with cobalt and manganese and nickel, of course, being either supply constrained or very expensive. The sodium ion battery is going to disrupt that. And let's talk about that. What is being produced today has a battery, a volumetric energy density of about 160 watt hours per kilogram. That is essentially what the best batteries were doing in like 2012, about a decade ago. When I say that's what the best batteries were doing about in 2012, the best batteries today that are on the market have between 200 and 300 watt hours per kilogram. That's what's being installed in cars right now, with an average of about 220 watt hours per kilogram. What is coming out next year with CATL is an improvement from 160 watt hours per kilogram up to 200 watt hours per kilogram, when the average for the industry with lithium ion batteries is only 200 watt hours per kilogram. So there's a slight performance degradation, but we've already settled, and even Tesla has already settled for that slight performance degradation in return for greater availability and lower cost. And I'm talking about the Blade battery from BYD, their own lithium iron phosphate battery. They've already settled for like 14%. Let me see here. I'm going to get to that here in just a minute. I've already seen reports that sodium ion batteries have no economic advantage over the lithium ion batteries. Do you trust the reports from CATL? Largely, CATL has been eminently trustworthy. And I wouldn't say that about a lot of Chinese companies that are reporting battery advances. The difference between them and a lot of these other companies that are reporting battery advances is that they get their crap into scale production really, really quickly, and they deliver on their promises. They're the largest battery maker, but they're also the best in the market. And we're going to go over some of those technical capabilities now. Battery production, volumetric density of that's already been tested. That's already out there. That's already being installed in devices, and even outside of the lab, that's been tested. And I definitely believe that. They published they applied for a few patents in 2022 that indicated first that they were going to get it up to 180 watt hours per kilogram. And the latest iteration of that, I believe, was in September, where it's going to be about 200 watt hours per kilogram. And they're expecting production in volume by the end of 2023. And that's going to make a huge difference. And it's roughly, what was I reading, that the battery installed in a car would be about 160 kilograms heavier than a lithium iron phosphate battery. Okay. So that's a difference, but it's only roughly like 380 pounds of difference. And an electric vehicle is already a lot heavier than an internal combustion engine vehicle in a lot of ways. So I haven't calculated out what the difference would be with that extra that extra amount of kilograms. But yeah, we're going to take a look at what that would be in the future. All right. So, but in terms of economic advantage, there's a massive economic advantage, and we're going to go over that right now. And a lot of that has to do with the price of lithium by metric ton versus sodium by metric ton. And the other thing has to do with how sodium is separated from its in the forms where it's found in nature, and why we already use that process at scale right now. And a lot of what we'll be doing is just expanding current production methods and facilities, rather than having to invent new ways to do things like we're trying to do with lithium. Okay. So what I'm saying is that the rise of sodium ion batteries, which I kind of predicted 2 years ago, but thought it was a decade off in the future. It's not a decade off in the future, guys. It's already here. Okay. And the idea that volumetric density could be increased beyond 200 watt hours per kilogram is not just simply not out of the question. It's likely to happen as well, as the pace of innovation is speeding up. There really hasn't been a lot of money and research put into sodium ion batteries because of all the concentration on lithium. But now that lithium is upwards of $78,000 per metric ton, we're seeing a lot more research go into that. And I'm going to tell you guys how much that equates to in savings when it comes to producing the batteries. And what I mean by this is, a lot of times it isn't the most technologically advanced product that sells. It's the one that's good enough, that is cheap enough for everyone to afford. And that's kind of where we're going with this. So we're going to talk about this for a little bit. CATL's will mass produce sodium ion batteries in 2023. So if you're not familiar with this company, it is the largest battery company on the planet, and it's the largest one by far. I think BYD is either fourth or fifth, and you can interchange them with Tesla. Tesla and BYD switch places all the time. So sodium is 2.3% of the world's crust. It's over 1,000 times more abundant than lithium. So sodium ion batteries have already been commercialized in e-bikes and energy storage, and it looks like cars aren't too far away. So CATL's battery capacity is expected to reach more than 670 gigawatt hours by 2025, according to estimates, and has announced a target of 1,200 gigawatt hours per year, perhaps at a run rate by the end of 2025 or in 2026. All right, so that's a huge amount that they're producing. So the energy density of CATL's sodium ion battery can achieve up to 160 watt hours per kilogram, and the battery can charge in 15 minutes up to 80%. The charge rate is actually better than Tesla's best battery right now. It can go from like 30 to 80 in about a half an hour. This can do it in about 15 minutes. Additionally, it can do it in a low temperature environment of negative 20 degrees Celsius and has a capacity retention rate of more than 90%. We are seeing greater suffering in terms of performance when it comes to lithium ion batteries in really cold regions at this point. So this is we're kind of looking at a bit of superiority here in terms of that. So mainstream lithium ion batteries, like I said before, have about 200 to 300 watt hours per kilogram. And they're experimenting right now with new technologies to create a second generation sodium battery that can achieve 200 watt hours per kilogram. That is not game over for lithium batteries, but what it does is it opens up a whole new avenue of cost savings when it comes to manufacturing, which is going to increase profitability for companies that do this, generally probably starting off in smaller cars. And it's going to increase profitability for everyone around there. And we're going to get to what that means here. So when we compare this to what's probably the best volumetric density in terms of a battery being used in vehicles right now, it's Tesla's 4680. And the energy density for that battery is somewhere between 272 and 296 watt hours per kilogram. But Tesla is struggling to master the manufacturing process with this battery because of the new dry electrode process and a couple of other things that I can't remember at the top of my mind right now. But they are definitely not producing them fast enough at this point. So those issues will likely get solved in the future. It is simply going to take some time to do that. I think this is probably going to end up being reserved for the highest energy requirement applications. And that's largely because it's going to be a lot more expensive to produce. All right. So CATL's new battery seems to have solved an energy density problem. So this energy density of 160 watt hours per kilogram. And let me put that in perspective for you. The Blade battery, which right now BYD is making at a breakneck pace, has a battery density of roughly 166 watt hours per kilogram. They're making it at so the Tesla Model 3 that uses NCA chemistry achieves 171 watt hours per kilogram at the pack level. Tesla CATL LFP cells, their lithium ferrophosphate cells or lithium iron phosphate cells, only achieve 126 watt hours per kilogram. These are the ones that are being exported to Europe right now and used in China. So this is already better than the current lithium iron phosphate batteries out there. It's already better than the Blade battery, right? So this is a big difference in terms of what this battery is going to be able to achieve. It is already on the level of the most advanced lithium iron phosphate battery out there, which was the cheapest battery that you could put in an electric vehicle up until September or so. So when I say this is big news, I really can't overestimate how much this is big news. So the gravimetric energy density of the Blade battery, which is the best lithium iron phosphate battery out there, is 166 watt hours per kilogram. CATL's new sodium ion battery is 160 watt hours per kilogram with today's technology, and the second generation is supposed to achieve at the pack level volumetric densities up to 200 watt hours per kilogram. So it's going to be more energy dense. Cycle life is probably the best benefit of BYD's battery. it's at least 3,000 plus cycles. And to be honest with you, it's probably closer to 5,000. Okay. So this is a huge improvement, not in terms of its overall performance or its overall density, but in terms of its cycle life, how inexpensive it is to make, and how it's good enough to do the job, right? This is BYD's Blade battery. The CATL battery, the issue with that in the past has been battery life, the cycle life, because the anode materials was holding it back from commercial production. That has supposedly been solved at this point, and there's going to be a further improvement. So right now, what they're putting out has a cycle life of about 1,000 cycles. That's what's being put out right now. The newer batteries are going to have a cycle life of about 2,500, according to what I've read. So, but here's the issue. Let me put a caveat on here. So I've read the newspaper articles that were written about the patents that were reported. I have not actually gone back and pulled the papers yet, the scientific papers, and read those for myself. Just not in the mood to do that today. But the sodium ion battery being produced by CATL right now is already on par with BYD's Blade battery. Okay. If you are an investor in the United States and you're not interested in the technological advances in EV technologies outside of the United States, you might not be aware of the Blade battery. But the Blade battery, when it came out in 2020 or 2019, whenever it came out, I really viewed that as a game changer, and it really had to do with manufacturing costs. So, right. So, and this is the thing. So, this means it's only slightly heavier than lithium ion batteries, which sit at about 220 watt hours per kilogram in terms of energy density, making a sodium ion powered EV possible. The battery itself can be charged from 0 to 80% capacity in 15 minutes, and its cycle life is rated for over 3,000 charge cycles. I said 2,500 earlier, equivalent to driving 1,000,000 miles. And that's super cheap at only $77 per kilowatt hour, equating to $5,500 in savings per EV. Given that current lithium ion packs cost just 130 watt hours per or $30 per kilogram per watt hour, CATL is predicting that they can produce them at a staggeringly low $40 per kilowatt hour once production is fully scaled, equating to a $9,200 savings per EV. That is why. Yeah. So yes, so you think solid state is redundant? I do, largely because I just don't think that the issues with solid state batteries are going to be solved before we have a simpler replacement. Okay, and when I say simpler replacement, it's not just that the mining and extraction issues have already been solved because we do this at scale now. It's really because the refining issues are all solved also. So in the process of chloride production, we already have mass scaled facilities to separate chloride from sodium, and that sodium is packaged up and made into other things. All we need to do is expand capacity at this point. There doesn't need to be a lot in the way of innovation in terms of refining capacity to produce sodium that's suitable for these batteries. I just think that solid state, even though it's probably a great technology, it is going to be limited because of cost. It is going to be, it's going to be limited because of cost. So I did want to say thank you to Shula's Joe and to Hal. For, happy holidays to you guys too. I don't know what you celebrate, so I say happy holidays. If it's Merry Christmas to you, it's Merry Christmas to you. If it's Happy Hanukkah to you, it's Happy Hanukkah. If it's Eid al-Fitr, then that as well. Whatever it is, actually, that's not this time of year, but whatever it is, I hope you guys are having a great time. The holidays can be difficult for a lot of people. If you have a friend who's struggling, give them a call. It can be really difficult this time of year, and give them a little support, man. A phone call from you could literally save their life. Okay. So back to this exciting stuff. So, if we compare this to the Tesla's leading industry 4680, you'd expect, rightly so, that the 4680 is more energy dense at around 270 watt hours per kilogram. That means 100, kilowatt hours at 460 would weigh about 130 kilograms less than CATL's sodium battery pack. This is a significant weight difference for performance cars, but not for the everyday vehicle. However, CATL's sodium battery wipes the floor in every other aspect. The 4680s charge at less than half the speed as they go from 10% to 80% in 30 minutes. They only last for 1,500 charge cycles, or the equivalent of 500,000 miles, and they currently cost about $91 per kilowatt hour. Now, Tesla said that cost could fall to $60 per kilowatt hour, once production is fully scaled, but this is still more expensive than CATL's sodium battery once it is up and running. So it seems like CATL has made the near perfect EV battery. Should Tesla be worried? I don't think they should be worried because CATL is still their largest battery supplier of battery cells. They're going to be using CATL's sodium technology here in the future. And I would not be surprised to see an announcement that whenever that $25,000 vehicle or smaller vehicle comes out, that it's not, I wouldn't necessarily expect to see it right away, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that it starts off in China first, where those vehicles, the smaller passenger vehicles like the Model 2 that might be coming out, is going to have a sodium ion battery in there. And it has to do with all of those other reasons, mainly cost. Achieving a $25,000 vehicle is going to be a lot easier if you can take $9,200 off the cost of the battery. That is huge news. So the 4680 is far from the battery that Elon Musk promised it would be, currently at least. They're just larger versions of old batteries, and they're struggling to get his manufacturing process sorted and scaled up because the 4680 relies on bleeding edge technology such as silicon anodes and dry coated electrodes. In comparison, CATL, the largest EV battery maker in the world with their sodium ion battery, doesn't rely on such difficult to build technology. So production of this battery should quickly catch up and overtake the 4680 and could reach its insane level of $40 per kilowatt hour relatively soon. They aim to get their sodium ion battery into production in 2023 and are already talking with manufacturers about using it in their cars. Ultimately, it seems like CATL is ready to take center stage in the EV battery race and cause a revolution. They are already center stage. I think this article is the person who wrote this article really isn't familiar with the battery world. They're already the largest producer. They're already producing the most amount of innovation. They already produce a huge variety of battery chemistries for all kinds of different special purposes. And when you do that, you're able to see how these work across different applications. And the pace of innovation in battery technology isn't going to decrease. It's actually going to increase. Like you look at Tesla, they're really only making batteries for a couple of different applications. CATL is making and researching battery technology for dozens, if not hundreds, of different applications. And the cross-pollination of these ideas is going to increase innovation as well. So this guy, though, definitely thinks that the CATL sodium-ion battery could make EVs truly affordable and usable and would render the 4680 obsolete. I don't. It's not going to render the 4680 obsolete, largely because performance cars and the semi are going to use the 4680 because of how much more energy dense it is. So could you have missed sodium and lithium battery packs? Sodium providing mixed sodium and lithium. You mean not? I don't know about the same vehicle. Actually, I don't see why you couldn't do that. I think the limitation there would be cost and complexity. So I think the limitation there would be cost and complexity. But let's talk about that for just a minute here. We're talking about sodium or lithium. Sodium ion batteries trump lithium ion batteries in many ways, but not on the key characteristic of energy density. That's right now. So energy density right now is anywhere from 70 to 160 watt hours per kilogram, depending on which battery you're looking at, with the potential to go to 200 watt hours per kilogram. So lithium ion batteries range right now from about 150 to 275 watt hours per kilogram for a nickel, manganese, cobalt, or cathodes, which nickel, manganese, cobalt cathodes, there's just a lot of complication there. The raw material cost, sodium hydroxide is $300 to $800 per metric ton. Lithium hydroxide is $78,000 per metric ton. Now, sodium hydroxide is not the only raw material that they'd be using. And honestly, I think right now this article is a little bit out of date. It's going to be between $800 and $3,000 per metric ton for the sodium materials that they would need to use to put in batteries. And I did some additional research on this. But lithium hydroxide is, I think it briefly touched close to 90,000 per metric ton. It's back down to around 78,000 per metric ton. So in terms of safety, this is also a little bit misleading. So there is no risk of thermal runaway with a sodium ion battery like there is with a lithium ion battery, but there is still a fire risk. Anybody who's ever thrown a chunk of sodium into water will tell you just how much of a risk there is of explosion. So like you're not going to get a perfectly safe battery. If you look at the Blade battery, it's the safest battery on the market. You can bend it, you can puncture it, you can do whatever, and it's not going to overheat and catch fire. Is still the possibility that that Blade battery, if the battery management and temperature management fails, that it can catch fire. That is a concern with any battery, but it's far less of a concern with the sodium ion battery. Just to say there's no risk of thermal runaway is a very specific type of danger. And it probably is because just on the tests that were conducted during whatever they used to compile this article, there was no risk of sodium ion. But there is always that potential risk. You would just need to know the very basics of chemistry to know that there's, and I'm talking high school level of chemistry, to know that there's a risk of that. So cycle life. Some developers have struggled to overcome performance fade. And with lithium ion batteries, there's a steady performance over a high number of cycles, which the highest cycling battery chemistry that's in production and in vehicles right now is the lithium iron phosphate battery. So this new innovation is really the overcoming of that performance fade. It's not the volumetric density of battery of the sodium ion battery. The volumetric density was actually solved, quite some time ago if it is on par with the BYD Blade battery and all of the other lithium iron phosphate batteries out there that are being used in cars, including the ones that are made in Tesla, which only have battery densities of like 130 watt hours per kilogram, right, for their lithium iron phosphate batteries. So that issue has been solved for quite some time, at least in comparison to their peers right now. It was cycle life that was the issue. They were stuck at about 1,000 cycles, whereas the nickel manganese cobalt battery is still stuck at about 1,500 cycles. So that has apparently been solved at this point with some of these new innovations. And it was a radical change in anode chemistry. And they even have an anode-less battery that people are talking about right now that I haven't done the full amount of research and reading on that right now. So I'm not going to comment too much on that right now, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand the scientific paper that I read on that. I'm going to have to get someone to explain it to me in layman's terms where I can understand it. So the other thing is recyclability. The recovery process for a sodium ion battery is really simple because the chemistry is really simple. It's really well understood. And we use every step. And this is the article that I read on this is every step that we would use in recycling the sodium ion battery, we already use in some other type of industrial process. So we do not have to reinvent anything. And so with lithium ion batteries, complex separation of metals is going to be required. And it's not something that we use in other industries at this point. So that is one of the things that's like super, super exciting. Okay, as of October 2022, lithium carbonate, which is actually different than what we talked about before, in China hit an all-time high of $74,475 per ton, eclipsing the record just set the prior month. And like I said, I think that it may have hit $90,000 at some point and then quickly retreated. But lithium prices have surged 123% year to date and are up as much as 10 times over historical levels. And supply is going to be constrained with sodium just because we don't have enough, or not with sodium, with lithium, just because we don't have enough people mining for it, enough people refining it. It's going to be constrained and prices are going to be high for years because demand can't keep up with supply. It's not that the supply is not there. It's just that we don't have enough people out there exploiting that supply. And it largely has to do with global EV sales doubling from 3.3 million units to 6.6 million units between 2020 and 2021. And they're expected to increase by another 52% in 2022, which I believe that number is going to be vastly outperformed. Most people were not counting on the vast improvement in BYD sales when it comes to their battery electric vehicles. BYD is actually absolutely kicking the ass of everyone in the industry in terms of growth in China right now, if not outside of the United States. So lithium miners have been unable to scale supply rapidly, depending on the method of extraction. Bringing new capacity online can take 3 to 5 years or more. The time is needed to conduct studies, secure permitting, raise capital, and deploy capital before any lithium can be produced. And this is where the bottleneck comes. So we're looking at supply constraint for at least 5 years when it comes to lithium. And there, in that time, alternatives are going to be developed in sodium ion batteries. So from what I understand, the majority of the cost of battery is not the cost of raw material, but the cost of manufacturing. With lithium being $74,000, it's a lot of raw materials. The cost of manufacturing has come down significantly over time as a result of Moore's law here. It's not the reduced cost of raw materials, but raw materials have only increased at this time. I've heard a couple of people make this argument before, and I can't find any data that backs up that argument that the majority of cost is not in raw materials, but in the cost of manufacturing. And that is definitely not true when we're looking at the base cost of cobalt, lithium, and everything else rising at this point. And yet we've seen a corresponding decrease in the cost of lithium ion batteries. So lithium's gone up, cobalt's gone up, manganese has gone up, nickel has gone up, and yet we've seen a decreasing price in manufacturing cost. That would suggest to me that there have been improvements in technology that have brought that cost down. We're looking at a relatively steady decrease in lithium ion battery costs since 2005, but we're probably looking at making this big jump because of the numbers here in this article here. Was it this article? At the number, this article where they're about the cost, right? So we're looking at a reduction of about $9,200 in the cost to manufacture a battery, just based on changes in raw materials. So, and let's also remember that lithium and sodium, they're in that same section of the periodic table. And this is a really simplistic explanation, but they're similar enough that a lot of the research that was done on lithium ion batteries is replicatable to a degree in sodium ion batteries. The big difference, of course, is the larger size of that sodium ion. And there was an issue with how many of those sodium ions you could get into an anode. Apparently that issue has been solved. And this is where the big issue comes with efficiency in the model and cycle life. All right. I want to read more about that before I go more in depth in that. And I realize that's not something that a lot of people think about, but this is probably the most important innovation that has come out in EVs in the last 2 years. Okay. And this is probably, it is going to massively affect Tesla's bottom line. The cost to put batteries in a Model 3, the cost to put batteries in this new vehicle that's coming out and maybe even the Model Y, I don't know. But at least the Model 3 and whatever new vehicle comes out, that small passenger vehicle, the future Model 2 or whatever, you're taking a massive chunk out of what would be needed to get down to $25,000 vehicle, a massive chunk in terms of the cost of battery. So, do you think this tech could be used in smaller products? Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I would think that in a few years, if we're looking at, and if you look at mobile phones, laptops, etc., they're not actually using the highest density battery chemistries that are out there right now for lithium. They were using lithium because that was the best alternative available, but they still weren't using the best batteries that were out there. I think this is coming immediately for smaller products, for mobile phones, laptops, etc. As soon as that can be produced in mass, that is going to happen. So let me see here. It has impacted local Model Sales 3 for the first time in 12 months. We have free stock of Model 3. Interesting. BYD is doing great and have been all over the BYD. So you've been all over the BYD Atto 3, which has been just delivered to Australia. The vehicle is super solid and people are buying. Man, as much as I talk about BYD, man, I have never been inside. Well, that is not true. I've been inside a BYD electric bus. But I've never been inside one of their passenger vehicles. And, I hear, but I do know an engineer that works for another company, and they were doing some sort of, not like industrial espionage, but they actually bought one of the BYD vehicles and tore it down. And so let me say, he is a German engineer, so he's critical of everything. And he had issues with build quality and the quality of steel that they put into the frame and some of the panels. But other than that, he was like, there's actually nothing to the technologies when it comes to the actual technology that makes the car go, right? And a lot of these are substantially similar, and there just aren't tons of differences between them. And the difference with BYD and everyone else was fit and finish. They saved some money in terms of fit and finish. They saved some money in terms of some reduced features, but it's produced a vehicle at a better price point that looks great from the outside. That's at a better price point. That's reliable and works. And they have a battery chemistry that works for right now. What I'm saying with this live stream is that sodium-ion battery chemistry is likely going to be better. I think it's going to be a huge improvement in terms of profit margins for Tesla. I think they're I think relatively rapidly, as soon as someone else proves the usability of sodium-ion batteries, Tesla will adopt that as well. When I see that right now those convertible bonds are looking like kind of a good deal, I really can't overestimate that. You'd need to go to your broker if you have a broker in order to buy those convertible bonds for the most part. At least I think you still need to do that. You'd have to buy them on the secondary market, but they have a maturity date in 2024. I don't remember what the strike price is there, but there's a fairly good guaranteed return with tons of upward potential if the stock price rises. And I think that as it settles in, that the fundamentals of Tesla are still really, really wonderful. And the fact that they're going to see huge manufacturing improvements with reduced cost for the 4680, as well as reduced cost for new battery chemistries that are coming online. So actually that's already been tested, and the performance in the cold is already superior to EVs with lithium batteries. And that's their biggest complaint was with cold performance. And that's one of the things that was tested for here. Performance at low temperature maintains 90% of performance at negative 20 degrees Celsius. And lithium batteries, the performance drops considerably in cooler temperatures. We're seeing performance drops of up to 30% in places like Norway, right? And that's kind of the biggest thing. So that is one of the concerns that's also going to be allayed by sodium-ion batteries. Like I can't explain to you that if sodium-ion batteries are at 160 watt hours per kilogram at what's being produced today, and the bladed is 166 watt hours per kilogram, it has a slightly superior safety profile. It has much better economics, and it has much better performance at low temperature. Man, this is a no-brainer. I think that there are all kinds of smaller EV companies first are going to go to that sodium-ion battery because they're going to have more trouble raising money here in the future. I'm really talking about smaller EV producers in China are the ones who are likely to use this sodium-ion battery first. Once it is proven, we're going to see wider adoption by the bigger boys with larger production. I wouldn't even be surprised to see companies completely abandon lines of research that they put billions of dollars into that, because you're looking at a cost savings of, initially at least, of $9,200 at best. Even if it's half that, a cost savings of $4,600 or something like that over the battery chemistries that are produced today at reduced performance of 10%. That may not be the product that the consumer wants, but that's the one they're going to get. Okay. Because margins when it comes to manufacturing rule all. This is the reason that car companies make plenty of money. They make money hand over fist. So why would they be willing to invest in a future of electric vehicles where the dealership model is going to collapse, right? Because a lot of them make their money on maintenance, right? So the dealership model is going to collapse to a degree. So why would they be investing? It's all about manufacturing margins. They're looking at the margins, the vehicle margin right now that Tesla has, and they're saying there is no way to lose if we can sell vehicles at the same volume we do now with a 20% increase in margin. Our company is going to make money hand over fist. This is the primary reason why an electric future is not only possible, it's actually already here. But that is the primary reason why. It's all about manufacturing margins, guys. So Oog says, gotta go. Happy holidays. Look forward to seeing you in the Discord chat, Oog, in our Patreon group. I don't have a huge Patreon group, but the people that are in there are absolutely wonderful. It's smart. There's no conflict in there. We're all just sharing ideas and talking about investments. And we have a lot of tech musings that go on in there. So Yeah. So the vehicle sales that are going on right now, I said I'm not particularly worried about Tesla cutting prices right now to push things out for the end of the year, and I really think that's all about beating delivery expectations. They had record deliveries last quarter. They're looking at record. They're going to do this every quarter, so they don't typically have a ton of price cutting that's going on. They're probably doing it right now, a little bit to counter higher interest rates, but a little bit just to make that final push of deliveries. You couldn't find the Discord chat. It's on. Go to your go to your. It's called the page or Patreon page benefits, or the page benefits membership benefits page, and you'll see a link to the Discord chat on that, and you'll be able to get in. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right, guys. So I went over a bunch of like technical stuff today. Didn't talk about the market at all, really, which what I talk about, and a lot of times didn't talk about the economy at large. If you guys have any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer a few questions because I do have a few minutes more before I'm going to get off. But this today was real heavy on a subject that a lot of people probably don't think about very much, but is going to have huge, huge impacts on the EV industry. And let me tell you, this is not something that's in the future. This is not something that innovation has to catch up. This is something that is already happening now. And a year or two from now, it's going to be a reality because the money has already been sunk into this. The manufacturing is already happening. And they're all, and we're going to see an announcement within the next 90 days, likely, of a company that's going to be using sodium ion batteries in a car. I predict that it's going to happen in the next 90 days. So tell me I'm wrong in the comments below this. Tell me how stupid I am or whatever. But look, I made the video on this 2 years ago, saying that this was the future. My idea of the future that was a decade off. Man, was I wrong. Only 2 years later, we have a sodium ion battery with volumetric energy densities comparable to what's being put in vehicles right now. So do you think QuantumScape has backed the wrong tech? QuantumScape doesn't have tech. They have a pouch that works. They haven't scaled it commercially. They haven't found any real commercial applications for it. They're not expected to have scaled production until 2027. They're a decade away from sniffing a profit. I wouldn't put any money into QuantumScape. It's been a really long. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it if you don't want to, but I personally would not put any of my money into QuantumScape. It's interesting what they're doing, but they have not found a solution for a technical issue that is affecting all solid state batteries right now. And they haven't published anything. There's no white papers printed about it. There haven't been any leaks. They haven't found a solution for the dendrite formation that is piercing the barrier. That basically is like piercing the separation barrier, which is causing shorts in the batteries and decreases cycle life. We're looking at cycles right now at around like 400 for their battery. And they say they've solved that issue, but nothing has been published. So Rivian, Lucid, Polestar, I don't know that this is true, but I believe that Polestar and VW already have deals with CATL, and they're already producers for CATL for their lithium ion batteries. And if they can, present a case where, this battery cell would work well for this type of vehicle, for like a daily commuter or something, which like the VW ID4, I think would be a prime candidate for these new sodium ion batteries to reduce the cost greatly. Like, to me, the VW ID4 is not worth what you're going to have to pay for it. It's a great car. Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't want to pay for that much for that vehicle. And I haven't taken that close of a look at Polestar's vehicle at this point. But with Rivian and Lucid, I think Lucid also has a deal with CATL for them to be, and Panasonic for them to be battery producers. So no one company is. I think Lucid is actually just with Panasonic, but Rivian has a deal with CATL now, but they're producing their own battery factories. But everyone right now uses CATL. Everyone knows. You have had to go to them as your supplier. They have not been the supplier of last resort. They're the best supplier that's out there at this point. And they're expanding their capacity. But battery production capacity is expanding worldwide at this point. And pretty soon, it's not just improvements in technology and reduced material costs that are going to push down costs for manufacturers. It's going to be increased competition. And it's going to be increased competition, consolidation, that sort of thing. That where larger companies are absorbing some of these smaller companies that may have better technologies. But yes, I absolutely do think though that QuantumScape has not really back along tech. Just don't think they have the tech that they say they have. I think that the applications and what we're looking at for the EV industry are probably not going to be achievable in time to defeat the coming wave of really cheap sodium ion batteries. So, what about LG Chem, Samsung, SDI? So SK Innovation, LG, and Samsung are all building factories here in the U.S. Part of that had to do with the Inflation Reduction Act and the basically vehicle manufacturers were saying, hey, if you want to do business with us, you now have to start making your batteries in the US because we can't get the subsidies unless a certain percentage of our vehicles being manufactured in the United States. So they're building factories here in the US. And honestly, the US environment is more conducive to innovation than the Chinese environment is. The Chinese business environment, in a lot of ways, is simply too conservative. Even though they've made great strides in battery chemistry right now, it is simply too conservative in a lot of ways. And the openness to new ideas in the United States produces a lot of businesses that fail. Don't get me wrong; your risk of failure is a lot higher here than it is China. But it also produces a lot of innovation, and I think that that them bringing some production here to the United States is probably actually going to improve their bottom line. So I just looked at LIT Holdings. Albemarle is number one, and the next 5 are battery companies, so it could be interesting. Yeah, so I hold a little bit of LIT. Originally, I bought them largely because the other competitor, BATT, Albemarle, was a much smaller portion of that. Yeah. Let me see here. I've heard a wide range of opinions on the Tesla Summit. Do you feel it'll be dragged out like Cybertruck or it'll be game changer? Well, it's not dragged out. They just made their first deliveries to Pepsi Cola, right? Which Pepsi Cola is, I guess, really that's going. They've done a lot of testing on the Cybertruck, but I really think that those deliveries and how that works is going to be the first real test of how it's going to work. I honestly don't see the semi being the Class 8 truck being replaced by the Tesla Semi in terms of long haul. I see it really replacing in a big way in terms of local delivery, right? Where you're just driving for a day and then you're parking the truck at night. And I think that's going to be the big game changer. And a lot of what's being hauled in that respect is going to be higher volume and not necessarily using that full 81,000 pounds to move. And I think it's going to be a game changer in that. But there's a lot of what goes on right now with that Class 8 trucking that is short haul and day trucking and not necessarily long haul. Long haul trucker's got to make his 600 miles per day or he's toast. The Cybertruck can't do that. It can only make about 500 miles per day. So, yeah. So lithium miners may even have more issues getting into production if sodium is adopted mainstream. That is true. You may see a lot of that financing dry up. So what you're probably going to see is what happens in the oil industry, which is basically wildcatting, where larger companies will finance a couple of their employees to go out or former employees to go out and start a new company to go and drill a site that is questionable in terms of its production. That way, if everything fails, your liability is limited to that new company and not to the parent company, right? And doesn't flow up to the parent company. You're likely to see a lot of that with lithium miners where the risk of failure is really, really high in terms of, okay, they're going to find lithium, but can they get it out of the ground and into refining in a manner that is cheaper than five or six other companies that are offering the same product? That's going to be the real issue there. I think you're going to see some of the funding dry up for lithium miners once sodium ion batteries are really proven in vehicles. And I think that the risk of failure is going to be high because the economics of what success means is going to change pretty greatly if sodium ion seems to get adopted in a more mainstream manner. So do you think that CATL patents will hold up copycats? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Patents have never been easier to circumvent than they are today. No patent lately has really survived. Where slight changes in chemistry, in process, or in ideas. So I don't think that's going to work in the long term. I think that the idea that they solve this, they publish this, somebody's going to find a way to slightly tweak things and circumvent a patent. Patent circumvention has never been easier than it is today, and a large part of the reason that Tesla is successful is because they actually released all of their patents for public use back in 2014. Tesla realized that the largest problem with his company in terms of cost was that he was the largest consumer of lithium ion battery cells, the 2170s, or was it 2020, the 1870s, or whatever it was. He was the largest consumer of those. And you would think that he would have a lot of pricing power because he was the largest consumer, but he was essentially the only consumer of those at that point, at that particular volume. And companies weren't willing to invest more in that production and reduce cost solely based on how much production was going to increase at Tesla. It wasn't until other companies got in the lithium ion battery game that we really saw the reduction in manufacturing costs start to increase when it came to lithium ion batteries. Because basically, the way Moore's law works is that for every cumulative doubling of production, you see a relatively predictable decrease in manufacturing cost due to improvements. Basically, it's simple as this: the more you manufacture something, the better you get at it. Right? It's a very simple concept, and that is true until you see a flattening of that Moore's law curve there. And we haven't flattened that Moore's law curve right now in terms of lithium ion. And let's remember, it would just be starting for sodium ion batteries, and we're going to see a minimum 50% reduction in raw material cost, maybe even like 80% reduction in materials cost, right? And then we're going to see those manufacturing improvements. And the battery manufacturing for the sodium ion battery really isn't radically different than it is for that lithium ion battery. And the refining process is a hell of a lot simpler. So, yeah, guys, this is, I tell people all the time who I know I have a lot of friends that are from areas where they're a little bit behind the times, and they keep talking about how stupid EV batteries are. I'm like, you basically sound like people that were manufacturing buggies in the early 1900s, right? You are fighting a battle that you are not going to win. And I think that we're at that point in the EV stage right now where anyone who's saying EVs aren't going to work, to make fun of them, they're going to miss out on all the money that's to be made in investing in these stocks. They're missing out in a lot of different ways, but in terms of sodium ion batteries here, I would be a little bit more careful right now in sinking a bunch of money into lithium miners, largely because for the next 5 years, I think it's going to work out fairly well just because there's constant supply constraint. But dude, I was really really dead wrong about how fast it was going to take sodium ion batteries to go from 70 watt hours per kilogram for what was produced when I made that video in 2021 to 160 watt hours per kilogram, right? Today, which is comparable to what is being put into the best electric vehicles today, the Tesla Model 3 that's produced in China. Ours is the one that's produced here in the United States is better, but I mean, that is comparable, not just comparable, but superior in a lot of ways. It's equal in terms of cycle life. It's roughly equal in terms of energy density, superior in terms of safety, better in terms of performance at low temperature, and better in terms of recyclability. So it's and in terms of raw material costs is better too. It's basically a no lose situation for them, and you're going to see mass adoption. All right, guys, I am out of time today. I can only talk for about an hour before my voice gives out. I used to do like 2.5 hours, and then I couldn't talk for like a day or two. Thank you very much for attending today. Excuse the clickbait title on there. The letter that Elon sent wasn't an emergency. It's something he does every year. Thank you for sticking around for this discussion on sodium ion batteries. And like I said, I did a video on this 2 years ago. The link is in the description. You can watch that, and you can see how wrong I was about how fast this technology was coming. All right, guys, thank you very much, and I will see you next time.